A red-clothed man who held a saber in his hand was walking towards Xianxia's group, while accompanied by 4 other middle-aged men. The red-clothed man's saber was being dragged against the ground, and it caused sparks to spray as he walked. The expressions of many in the surroundings changed drastically when they saw the red-clothed man, and their eyes were filled with fear. The red-clothed man stopped and glanced at the surroundings. "Are all of you still not going to fuck off?" Their expressions changed slightly, but none of them dared to talk back and just vanished on the spot. The red-clothed man chuckled and gazed at Xianxia. "My name is Xianxia, and I've come here just for your group. Do you know why I'm here?" Xianxia nodded. "I know a little." Xianxia smiled. "It's really normal for a few to die from causing trouble in this city. If they die, it was because their strength was insufficient, and it can't be blamed on anyone. But I heard that you are very arrogant, and you didn't respect us guards at all. Is that so?" Xianxia grinned. "There's no need for all that crap. Just be frank and tell me what you want, so that I know how I should deal with you. Men should be a little straightforward. Don't you think so too?" Xianxia gazed at Xianxia for a short while before he smiled. "All right, since you want to be straightforward, then I will. You've violated the rules of the city, and you should be killed and tossed out of the city. However, I'm in a good mood today, so I've decided to spare all of you. But while you can avoid death, you can't avoid punishment. Each of you must pay 100 violet crystals, and then kneel down and apologize to my brothers. Then I'll let bygones be bygones, all right?" Xianxia shrugged when he spoke up to this point. "To be honest, I'm being merciful for the first time." Xianxia chuckled. "How about we do this? All of you give me 100 violet crystals each, and then I'll let all of you leave. All right?" Xianxia scratched his ear and said, "I didn't hear you clearly. Can you repeat that again?" Suddenly, Xianxia vanished on the spot. Xianxia's expression changed drastically, and he swung his saber swiftly. Bang! A muffled explosion resounded, and then Xianxia's figure was blasted flying. A moment later, Xianxia suddenly appeared in front of Xianxia, and then he stomped his foot down against Xianxia's stomach. A mouthful of blood sprayed out from the latter's mouth as he crashed to the ground. Bang! The entire ground shook while the ground in an area of a few hundred kilometers cracked apart. The other guards were astounded, and they were about to attack. However, a terrifying aura suddenly locked onto them, and it smashed down upon them like a mountain. Not to mention moving, even breathing was quite difficult for them. And Nanjing spoke indifferently. "All of you just have to stand still." Cold sweat instantly started flowing from all of them. "He's really strong." The gray-robed old man had a solemn expression on his face as he spoke in a low voice at a corner in the city. "Xianxia is a high-rank half-saint, and he has even fought saints in the past. His strength can be said to be almost completely gained from his own hard work. However, he didn't even have the ability to fight back." The beautiful woman's gaze descended onto Xianxia. "Moreover, he merely relied on pure physical strength and speed. He hasn't even displayed his true strength. Needless to say, he's really not bad." The gray-robed old man shook his head. "He's still a little rash." She spoke indifferently. "We just have to watch, and we'll know if he really was rash." Xianxia had just intended to stand up when a foot stomped down on his chest, and he fell right back to the ground. Xianxia looked down at Xianxia and said, "Do I have to repeat myself? Who are you?" Xianxia stared fixedly at Xianxia. This fellow before him was a half-saint just like him. But this fellow's strength was something he absolutely couldn't compare to. He knew that he was in trouble. Xianxia shook his head and said, "You and your other friends come to a total of 500 violet crystals. Pay and live, die if you don't. So, do you have it or not?" "I don't." Xianxia stared fixedly at Xianxia while his gaze was surprisingly calm. Xianxia nodded, and then he suddenly raised his right foot and stomped it down towards Xianxia's head. Xianxia's pupils constricted to the size of needles. Suddenly, a blast of energy tore through the air and instantly struck Xianxia's right foot, causing it to move off target a little and stomp down on the ground right beside Xianxia's head. Bang! The ground there instantly collapsed. Xianxia's countenance turned ghastly pale while cold sweat seeped out incessantly from his face. However, his gaze was still fearless, and he didn't beg for mercy. That subordinate of mine has a bad temper. I hope you can forgive him if he has offended you in any way. Meanwhile, a middle-aged man in a luxurious robe walked over slowly, while accompanied by over a dozen guards in golden armor. He walked over to Yang Yi before he glanced at Xianxia, and then he gazed at Yang Yi and flicked a spatial ring to Yang Yi. There are 500 violet crystals in there. Please do accept it as our apology. Yang Yi moved his leg away and took the spatial ring. He smiled. You're too kind. It was just a small matter. The middle-aged man glanced at Yang Yi and smiled. I'm the Grand Commander of Sky Capital City, Shi Tian. May I know your name? Yang Yi replied, Yi Yang. Shi Tian nodded. It seems like you're heading to White Deer Dimension? Yang Yi nodded. Indeed. Why? Shi Tian asked. Are you going to watch the competition in White Deer Academy? Yang Yi was surprised. Others can watch the competition? Of course. Shi Tian smiled. As a diamond rank power, it usually invites other friendly powers to watch the competition it holds. Of course, ordinary people are allowed to watch as well, but they have to pay with violet crystals. Yang Yi nodded. So that's how it is. Shi Tian continued. This year's competition is extremely interesting. Yang Yi asked, Why? Shi Tian glanced at Yang Yi with surprise. Brother Yi, have you not heart? Yang Yi shook his head. I haven't. Shi Tian glanced at Yang Yi and said, The competition in White Deer Academy has always been held between the Law Faction, the Scholarly Faction, and Ocean of Clouds Academy from Pine Prefecture. However, Ocean of Clouds Academy is usually only there for show. But it's different this time, and it's much more interesting. Because the current dean of Ocean of Clouds Academy, I think his name is Yang Shiwushin suddenly said Yang Yi. Right, Yang Yi. Shi Tian glanced at Shiwushin and continued, I heard that he boasted about annihilating all the participants from the Law Faction. Haha. Now, countless people throughout our central divine prefecture are waiting for his arrival. Because all of us want to see exactly what ability that fellow from the Pine Prefecture, Yang Yi, possesses to actually boast about crushing the Law Faction. The corners of Yang Ye's mouth twitched. Fortunately, I didn't use my real name or I would really be famous now. He just never imagined that the Law Faction would actually spread the fact that he intended to challenge them. What's their true intention? Yang Yi frowned. Meanwhile, Shi Tian continued. Right, the Scholarly Faction seems to be not participating in the competition because of that fellow Yang Yi. In other words, it's a one-on-one battle between the Law Faction and Ocean of Clouds Academy. Yang Yi nodded. He didn't want to waste any more time here and immediately said, Since it was only a misunderstanding, and that misunderstanding has been resolved. Farewell. Yang Yi turned around with the intention of leaving. Wait a moment. Meanwhile, Shi Tian suddenly stopped Yang Yi. There's a little problem with the teleportation formation because it was stopped by force earlier. It'll take another 4 hours to repair. So you'll have to stay for a while. Yang Yi gazed at Shiwushin. Shiwushin walked over to the formation, and a short while passed before he turned around and nodded to Yang Yi. Yang Yi nodded and said, Since that's the case, we'll stay for a while. We're in no rush anyway. Shi Tian asked, Why don't you rest in my estate? Yang Yi replied, There's no need for that. Shi Tian nodded. Then please do as you please. I'll be taking my leave. He led the others away once he finished speaking. There was something off about his reaction. Shiwushin spoke in a low voice once Shi Tian left. I feel like he's buying time. Yang Yi spoke indifferently. He better let me leave peacefully, otherwise I'll make him beg me to leave. Shiwushin suddenly said. Actually, after watching you, I suddenly realized how foolish I was. And Nanjing suddenly added, You were always a fool. Shiwushin's face darkened. Yang Yi glanced at Nanjing and felt quite amused as he said, What do you mean? Shiwushin puckered his lips and said, In the past, I went through all sorts of hardships like killing demon beasts, completing assignments, and risking my life to obtain violet crystals. But even then, I only got a few dozen in a month. You, on the other hand, got a few hundred in just a day here in the Central Divine Prefecture. Alas, robbing is much more promising. Yang Yi was at a loss for words. Commander Sure, why? Xianxia was puzzled. Fool! Just look at their strengths. Do you think they are ordinary people? Sure Tian's face was gloomy. Not to mention you. Even I am no match for them. If I didn't hand over those 500 violet crystals, then you would be fucking dead by now. Xianxia, I'm not trying to insult you, but can you use your brains a little? They just killed 2 people that weren't related to you at all. If they are dead, then they are dead. Why did you go looking for trouble with them? Are you tired of living? They disregarded us. I couldn't swallow such an insult. Xianxia spoke in a low voice. Commander Sure, you aren't really going to let them leave, right? That was 500 violet crystals. Let them leave. Sure Tian spoke ferociously. I'll make them give me 2 times the number of violet crystals they took. Summon the elite guards and the other 3 grand commanders. We're going to make a show of strength today, right? There's no need to notify the city governor about this. He's entertaining guests from the Thousand Crane Sect. Don't disturb him. Meanwhile, a middle-aged man suddenly asked, what about their identities? Don't worry. They aren't from our Central Divine Prefecture. Sure Tian continued. They know nothing about the Central Divine Prefecture. Obviously, they aren't from here. Moreover, that black-robed man knows Yang Yi. That proves that they are definitely from Pine Prefecture. Since they are from Pine Prefecture, why should we fear them? There isn't even a single diamond rank power there. Xianxia said. So that was why Commander Sure talked with them. Why else? Sure Tian spoke coldly. Learn from that. You have to use your brain when you do things. Xianxia said. I understand. 15 minutes later. Bang, bang, bang. The ground where Yang Ye's group resided had suddenly started to tremble violently. It didn't take long for almost 1,000 people to appear within their fields of vision. The group was led by Sure Tian, and there were 3 other middle-aged men by Sure Tian's side. Besides Sure Tian and the 3 middle-aged men who were saints, the rest were high-rank half-saints. Yang Yi smiled. What's the meaning of this? Sure Tian smiled. I'll just get straight to the point. 1,000 violet crystals and sever your own arms. Then I'll allow all of you to leave. All right? Yang Yi glanced at Sure Tian and nodded. I won't be leaving today without 2,000 violet crystals. 2,000 violet crystals? Sure Tian roared with laughter, and he laughed for quite some time before a fierce expression suddenly arose on his face. Don't kill them. I want them to regret being born. As soon as he gave the order, the army behind him instantly charged at Yang Ye's group. Hiss! Meanwhile, a ray of black light flashed, and then a spear pierced through the chests of over a dozen guards. Sure Tian and the others' expressions changed, and their gazes descended onto the person who launched the attack. It was Xu Wuxian. Yang Yi glanced at Xu Wuxian with surprise. The latter shrugged. Actually, I'm quite strong. You just never gave me the chance to prove it. Yang Yi nodded and pointed at Sure Tian and the other 3 saints. Don't say that I didn't give you a chance. I'll leave the 4 of them to you. Xu Wuxian raised his hands. Big brother, I take back what I said. You're courting death. Meanwhile, Sure Tian roared furiously and charged at Yang Ye's group with the other 3 middle-aged men. Besides that, the army of around 1,000 high-rank half-saints followed behind them. Bang! A ray of golden light flashed, and then one of the saints by Sure Tian's side was blasted flying. A moment later, a Nanjing suddenly appeared in front of that saint, and she swung her leg right at him. Her kick was beyond swift, and that saint wasn't even able to react before it struck his chest. Bang! A muffled bang resounded. That saint crashed down to the ground, and his fate was unknown. A moment later, a Nanjing appeared in front of another saint. Just like the saint before him, they merely exchanged 2 blows before he was blasted flying as well, and he flew over 5,000 kilometers away. After dealing with 2 saints in an instant, a Nanjing gazed at the black-robed middle-aged man by Sure Tian's side. The middle-aged man's pupils constricted, and he was just about to attack when a spear tore through the air like a golden streak. It instantly arrived before him. The black-robed man was shocked and hurriedly waved his hands, causing the space around him to become fortified and form a thick spatial wall. Bang! The spear slammed against the spatial wall, and it instantly cracked apart before the spear pierced through the black-robed middle-aged man's chest. The black-robed middle-aged man's eyes were opened wide and filled with disbelief. In an instant later, the color in his eyes had dimmed, and countless strands of spirit energy surged out from within him. A saint had fallen. In less than 20 breaths of time, 2 saints had suffered miserable defeat and 1 had been killed. Everyone here gazed at a Nanjing, and even Xianxia had done the same. At this moment, Xianxia's body was trembling, and Nanjing waved her right hand and Sky Split flew back into her grasp. After that, she turned around, walked over to Xianxia's side, and fell silent. Xianxia glanced at her, and there was a trace of shock in his eyes. He knew she was very strong, but he hadn't expected her to be that strong, because even he couldn't have done it any better. Fortunately, a Nanjing was on his side, and she was going with him to White Deer Academy. Wuxia glanced at a Nanjing, and the corners of his mouth twitched while he unconsciously took a few steps back. Even though he knew that a Nanjing was very strong, he hadn't expected her to be that strong. I really should avoid offending her in the future, Wuxia decided in his heart. He hadn't forgotten how a Nanjing had asked him to fight her in single combat. Now, he felt very lucky that he hadn't agreed, or he would have been crushed before he even realized it. The beautiful woman and the others from Cloud Merchant Group had solemn expressions on their faces, and their gazes were on a Nanjing. The gray-robed old man behind the beautiful woman spoke solemnly. Eldest young miss, her strength is probably sufficient to be ranked on the martial rankings. The martial rankings. Yu Qing's pupils constricted when he heard the old man. The martial rankings was the ranking which was held in the highest regard within the Central Divine Prefecture. Anyone capable of being ranked on there was absolutely a genius amongst geniuses. The beautiful woman nodded lightly. She is strong indeed. As for whether she can be ranked on the martial rankings, it's too early to say for sure. At the very least, the strength she has revealed until now isn't sufficient for that. Of course, I'm most curious about that man called Yang, because he's clearly the leader of the group. The gray-robed old man said, his speed and strength aren't bad. He has clearly cultivated his body. Only his true physical strength and ability is still a mystery, she replied. We'll find out soon. Xianxia gazed at Xianxia and smiled. Do you know why you're still alive? Xianxia and the others behind him had very unsightly expressions on their faces. The situation had been turned around in an instant. At this moment, they realized that numbers were nothing. Xianxia took a deep breath. I admit defeat. As he spoke, his right hand, which was beneath his sleeve, moved slightly as he crushed a talisman. Xianxia said, I don't like talking nonsense. Do you have 2,000 violet crystals or not? Xianxia clenched his fists, and quite some time passed before he shook his head. I don't. Xianxia nodded. Sky Split suddenly left a Nanjing's grasp, and it transformed into a ray of golden light which instantly appeared in front of Xianxia. Xianxia's pupils constricted, and he naturally didn't choose to stand there and wait for death to arrive. He withdrew a huge saber, and he swung it with both hands. Clang! The clear and melodious sound of metal colliding resounded, and then his saber exploded into pieces while the powerful force of the collision blasted him flying. He'd just fallen to the ground when a ray of golden light instantly arrived before him. Xianxia was horrified. Suddenly, a huge palm tore through space, and it was clenched into a fist before slamming itself against Sky Split. Bang! Sky Split was pushed slightly off target, and it passed by Xianxia's head and stabbed into the ground. And Nanjing's eyes narrowed slightly. She waved her right hand and summoned Sky Split back. She was about to attack again when Xianxia stopped her. Meanwhile, an old man in luxurious robes appeared in front of Xianxia, a mid-rank saint. The old man paid no attention to Xianxia, and his gaze just descended onto a Nanjing. A short while passed before he gazed at Yang Yi. I'm the deputy city governor of Sky Capital City, Moyun. How about we just forget what happened today? Yang Yi pointed at Shi Tian and said, That's what he said earlier, but I'm sure you've seen the outcome of that. I've only noticed my subordinates being killed or injured. Moyun looked Yang Yi in the eyes and said, Either leave or be thrown out of the city on your backs. What's your choice? Bang! A pair of black wings appeared behind Yang Yi. His figure shot forward explosively and instantly arrived before Moyun, and then he slammed his fist towards Moyun. The others behind Moyun were instantly blasted flying by the powerful force contained within the punch. Moyun's eyes narrowed as he slowly clenched his right fist. A moment later, the space before him suddenly warped, and it caused Yang Yi's fist to start warping as well. But Yang Yi suddenly twisted his fist a moment later, and the warped space instantly collapsed. The fist faced no further obstruction and arrived before Moyun. The corners of Moyun's eyes twitched slightly while a trace of seriousness could be seen in his eyes. He didn't dare act carelessly and circulated his profound energy before pouring it into his right arm, and then he slammed his fist against Yang Yi's fist. Bang! An explosion resounded as the space around them instantly exploded apart. Moyun was forced back repeatedly by the powerful force of the collision, and he moved over 30 m back. Meanwhile, not only did Yang Yi's figure show no signs of being pushed back, Yang Yi even pressed forward and slammed his fist at Moyun again. Bang! Moyun was blasted back again. But Yang Yi appeared in front of him again just a moment later. Just like that, Moyun was blasted over 500 m back in just a few breaths of time, and he didn't even have the ability to fight back. Shi Tian and the others were astounded. After all, Moyun was the deputy city governor and a mid-rank saint. However, he didn't even have the ability to fight back when facing that man called Yi Yang. Who is he? This question hadn't just appeared in Shi Tian and the others' minds. Even the others from Cloud Merchant Group had solemn expressions on their faces. He's probably a body cultivator. The gray-robed old man behind the beautiful woman spoke solemnly. His body has already attained the divine valor realm. I never expected that such a genius would have actually come from Pine Prefecture. The beautiful woman's gaze was on Yang Yi as well, and she remained silent for a short while before she crushed a talisman. The gray-robed old man was slightly puzzled. Eldest young miss? She spoke solemnly. Investigate him again. Bang! Yang Yi slammed his fist against Moyun's stomach, and a mouthful of blood sprayed from the latter before he crashed against the ground. Yang Yi was about to charge forward when a voice suddenly resounded. Stop! As soon as the voice resounded, an old man and 10 women in moon-white robes appeared here. The old man glanced at Yang Yi, and then he glanced at one of the women behind him. Elder Lin Yuan, please forgive me for this scene. I'll personally send you to White Deer Mountain Range once I'm done with the matters here. The woman called Lin Yuan glanced at Yang Yi and said, There's no need for that, City Governor Chen. We'll leave right now. Suddenly, Yang Yi obstructed Lin Yuan and the others' path. Lin Yuan frowned slightly, while a wisp of detest flashed through her eyes. Fuck off! However, Yang Yi paid no attention to her at all. His gaze was on a woman by Lin Yuan's side, and his hand was trembling from excitement and joy. Yushi? It's you. It was none other than Xiao Yushi. Yang Yi hadn't expected that he would have actually encountered her here, and his feelings at this moment were simply indescribable. Xiao Yushi's beautiful brows were pressed together as she said, You know me. Yang Yi was stunned. You're my wife. How could I not know you? As soon as Yang Yi finished speaking, Xiao Yushi suddenly drew her sword and swung it. An array of saber energy instantly struck Yang Yi. Bang! Yang Yi was blasted over 20 m away. Moreover, a gash that was a few dozen centimeters long had appeared on his chest. Yang Yi was stunned as he gazed at the injury on his chest, and Nanjing's eyes narrowed slightly. Sky Split started to spin in her grasp, but she didn't attack. Your wife. Lin Yuan's gaze descended onto Yang Yi, and then she said, How dare you speak like that to a member of my Thousand Crane sect? Yang Yi paid no attention to Lin Yuan, and he just gazed at Xiao Yushi and said, "Yushi, do you really not recognize me? You really are my wife. You—" A wisp of detest flashed through her eyes, and she drew her saber and slashed once more. A strand of saber energy shot forward and instantly arrived in front of Yang Yi. But it was blasted apart by a spear. A Nanjing appeared before Yang Yi with Sky Split in her grasp, and she said, "She really doesn't remember you anymore." Yang Ye's face fell, and his gaze shot towards Lin Yueyin. "She and I really are. I've seen many who've come to strike up a conversation with her, but it's the first time I've seen someone do it like you." Lin Yueyin interrupted him and said, "I'm afraid I would dirty my hands by killing you. Yushi, let's go." She led Xiao Yushi and the others to the teleportation formation which had just been repaired, and it didn't take long for a ray of blue light to surge out and flicker before they instantly vanished on the spot. Yang Yi was about to chase after them when City Governor Chun suddenly obstructed Yang Ye's path, and he said, "I don't know who you are, but I have to say that you really are brave. You even dared to speak like that to a disciple from the Thousand Crane Sect. You? Fuck off." Yang Yi roared furiously and slammed his fist forward. An energy fist flashed forward and shot at City Governor Chun. The latter grunted coldly and slapped his right hand forward, and Yang Ye's attack was instantly dispersed. However, Yang Yi had already arrived on the teleportation platform, but it didn't move at all. City Governor Chun had his hands behind his back as he spoke indifferently. "If I let you go just like that, then wouldn't my subordinates have died for nothing?" Yang Yi took a deep breath, and then he gazed at City Governor Chun. "You don't want to let me leave, right? Then I won't." As soon as he finished speaking, the Herculean appeared in his grasp, and then the sword wings on his back flapped. Yang Yi suddenly vanished on the spot while a string of afterimages appeared here. City Governor Chen's expression had instantly changed at the exact same instant that Yang Ye's figure had vanished. Because Yang Ye's speed was too swift, it was swift to the point that even he was merely able to faintly sense Yang Ye's movements. Bang! A huge explosion resounded, and then City Governor Chun moved backwards repeatedly and only stopped after he'd been pushed almost 1 kilometer back. Moreover, there was a round shield in his hand, and a part of it had sunk in severely. City Governor Chen's figure had just stopped when a spear tore through the air and instantly stabbed against the shield. An explosion resounded again while the shield instantly exploded into bits. Moreover, the powerful aftershock of the collision blasted him back again. Meanwhile, Yang Yi suddenly appeared in front of him, and then the Herculean sword slammed down towards his head. At this moment, a terrifying aura instantly locked onto him, causing him to be unable to dodge this attack at all. City Governor Chun was astounded. Obviously, he hadn't expected Yang Ye's strength to be so terrifying to the point he was completely suppressed. He didn't have the time to think about anything else, and a terrifying aura instantly surged out from within him before he slapped his right palm against Yang Ye's Herculean sword. A ray of white light surged out along with his palm and instantly enveloped both him and Yang Yi at the same time. Bang! The white light dispersed, and then City Governor Chen's figure was blasted away. At the same moment that his figure had just been blasted away, a spear tore through the sky, instantly pierced through his shoulder, and nailed him on a building in the distance. Shi Tian and the others were flabbergasted. As for the group from Cloud Merchant Group, they were stunned as well. After all, City Governor Chun was a mid-rank saint. However, he'd been defeated by them without even being able to fight back. The gray-robed old man behind the beautiful woman spoke in a slightly bitter voice. Such strength. Even I would probably be no match for their joint forces." Yu Qing spoke solemnly. "They are no ordinary people." The beautiful woman didn't speak. She was just sizing up Yang Yi and a Nanjing incessantly. Meanwhile, Yang Yi flashed over to City Governor Chun. 2,000 violet crystals. Do you have them? Who are you? City Governor Chun stared fixedly at Yang Yi. You're not from Pine Prefecture at all. It's impossible for Pine Prefecture to possess someone as strong as you. Yang Yi suddenly slammed his fist against City Governor Chen's stomach, causing a mouthful of blood to spray from his mouth. Next, Yang Yi grabbed the latter's clothes before slamming his figure against the ground. Bang! The entire area instantly cracked apart. City Governor Chun was just about to stand up when Yang Yi appeared in front of him, and then the Herculean sword was pressed against the center of his forehead. I'll ask you one last time. Do you have 2,000 violet crystals? City Governor Chun stared fixedly at Yang Yi. I do? But do you dare to take them? Yang Yi said. Give them to me. City Governor Chun took a deep and long glance at Yang Yi, and then he looked at Shi Tian. The latter hesitated for a moment before he turned around and left. It didn't take long for Shi Tian to return, and he flicked a spatial ring to Yang Yi. Yang Yi glanced at its contents, and there were exactly 2,000 violet crystals there. Meanwhile, a voice resounded from the side. I wouldn't take it if I were you. Yang Yi turned around and saw the beautiful woman's group of 3 walking over slowly. She gazed at him and said, the relationship between the powers in Sky Capital City is complicated. Even though he's the city governor, he's just a puppet who was pushed up to this position by some powers. The income of the city doesn't belong to him, it belongs to those powers. If he dies, then those powers would just get someone else to be the city governor. Because it isn't necessary for them to offend 3 formidable experts of unknown origin. But if you take that spatial ring, then they will definitely not let the matter rest. Yang Yi replied to her with a question. Then what do you think I should do? She was slightly stunned because she'd never thought about that. Now that Yang Yi had asked her about it, she was slightly stunned. Because Yang Yi couldn't just give up these violet crystals that he'd gained, right? Yang Yi put the spatial ring away. Do you know which powers are supporting the city governor? I'll just deal with them in one go. You can't. She shook her head. It isn't something that can be resolved by just killing them. The relationships between them are complicated, and there are even more powers standing behind them. Moreover, there are even powers standing behind the powers that support them. In the end, you'll notice that there might even be diamond rank powers amongst them. To be honest, it isn't really realistic for you to fight a diamond rank power with your current strength. It is quite troublesome. Yang Yi nodded. I don't have time to waste here. As he spoke, he gazed at City Governor Chun and said, Do you have even more violet crystals? No. As soon as City Governor Chun answered him, Yang Yi waved the Herculean sword slightly, and a fountain of blood sprayed out from City Governor Chen's throat. His eyes were opened wide, and they were filled with disbelief. As for Shi Tian, Mo Yun, and the others, they were first shocked when they witnessed this scene, and then all of their figures fled towards the surroundings. Meanwhile, Nanjing suddenly stomped her right foot against the ground and vanished on the spot. In less than 5 breaths of time, she'd returned here, and there were 3 heads not too far away from here. They belonged to Mo Yun, Shi Tian, and Xianxia. You've got the violet crystals you wanted. The beautiful woman spoke in a low voice. Since you took their violet crystals, then why go to such extremes? I didn't say that I would spare them once they gave those violet crystals to me. Yang Yi chuckled. Besides that, this is how the world works. Everyone has to pay for their actions, right? She replied. You're just causing trouble for yourself. Yang Yi asked. Would they not cause trouble for me if I spared them? She gazed at him for a short while, and then she turned around and gazed at Yuqing. The latter hurriedly nodded and left. Farewell. As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Yi turned around and intended to leave. He didn't really like interacting with merchants because they like to manipulate others psychologically, and he just happened to hate that. Those women from before were from the Thousand Crane Sect, and the Thousand Crane Sect is a diamond rank power. The woman who led the group was Lin Yueyin, an elder of the Thousand Crane Sect. She's a mid-rank saint, but her strength far surpasses City Governor Chen. As for that woman by her side, if I'm not wrong, then she should be the most renowned disciple of Thousand Crane Sect in recent years, Xiao Yushi. She fell silent once she spoke up to this point. Yang Yi stopped, and then he turned around and looked at her. I want to know everything about her. I'll be extremely grateful if you can provide me with such information. The beautiful woman said, Answer a question of mine. Yang Yi replied, Go on. She stared fixedly at him and said, Are you Yang Yi? Yang Yi and the others' expression changed. Obviously, they hadn't expected her to actually ask that question. A short while passed before Yang Yi said, "Yes, it really is you." She continued, "An expert from Pine Prefecture that possesses such formidable strength. Of course, the main reason was your name. Yi Yang. If it's flipped around, wouldn't it be Yang Yi?" Her gaze descended onto Yang Yi again when she spoke up to this point, and she sized up Yang Yi for a moment before she spoke. As expected of the one who spoke about crushing the law faction. "You're extraordinary indeed," Yang Yi said. "It's your turn to answer me. I don't know the specifics. All I know is that she suddenly appeared in the Thousand Cranes sect a few years ago. The reason I know that is because she refused a proposal from an expert ranked at the 35th position on the martial rankings, Mo Yuntian. Mo Yuntian is an expert on the martial rankings, so countless women admire him, yet she refused decisively. It was because of Mo Yuntian that the world came to know about her existence. Right? Mo Yuntian is a student of White Deer Academy's law faction." The beautiful woman continued slowly. "Even though Thousand Crane Sect is a diamond rank power, not one of its disciples have been able to put their name on the martial rankings. The Thousand Crane Sect has probably sent her there with their group in order to bring them together. Because every genius on the martial rankings will definitely become an extraordinary expert, and every single power is willing to make friends with and even draw over such a person." Yang Yi spoke in a low voice. "She's my wife." The beautiful woman glanced at Yang Yi, but her eyes clearly showed that she didn't believe him. Meanwhile, Xianxia walked over to Yang Yi and shook his head. "To be honest, your method of pursuing women is quite lousy." Yang Yi was at a loss for words. It didn't matter whether it was the beautiful woman or Xianxia. None of them believed Yang Yi, especially Xianxia. He was very well aware that Yang Yi was from Pine Prefecture and had never been to the Central Divine Prefecture, but Xianxia was from the Central Divine Prefecture. So, he felt that Yang Yi had taken a liking to her. Yang Yi shook his head and didn't explain. "Let's go. Why head to White Deer Dimension right now?" Meanwhile, the beautiful woman spoke. "According to my knowledge, there are still 10 days before the competition begins. Right? I need to find out the reason." Yang Yi spoke in a low voice. Xianxia didn't recognize him, so he had to figure out why. "Then that's even more reason for you not to go." She continued. "They are probably in White Deer Academy now. As part of the invited guests, they have definitely entered the academy. Do you think that you can sneak into White Deer Academy? Even if you can, she doesn't recognize you now, right?" Yang Yi gazed at the beautiful women. "You believe that she's my wife?" She shook her head slightly. "I don't. But there's no reason for you to lie to me." Yang Yi rolled his eyes because that didn't make any difference. She said, "My cloud merchant group isn't bad when it comes to information. If you're not in a rush, you can stay in the city for now, and I'll help you compile the information you need. All right?" Yang Yi didn't answer her but replied with a question instead. "Why are you helping me?" She smiled. "Because you're Yang Yi." Yang Yi shook his head. "I don't understand what you mean." "Because your name has a huge commercial value." She continued. "I think we can work together in many aspects, and it's beneficial to both of us. Moreover, I can even provide a huge amount of help to you." "What do I have to do in return?" asked Yang Yi. He didn't believe that anything in this world would be done for free. She replied, "Nothing for now." Yang Yi glanced at her and said, "Can you help me look for a person? She should be in the Central Divine Prefecture as well." "I can." She nodded. "Let's go rest at my Cloud Merchant Group's branch for now. Don't worry. I've sent someone to deal with the matters in the city, so there won't be any trouble." Yang Yi hesitated for a moment, and then he nodded. Even though he really wanted to know what had happened to Xianxia, he knew that he couldn't be impatient. Everything else didn't really matter to him. But the main problem was that Xianxia was hostile towards him, and that was the most troublesome aspect. Moreover, besides Xianxia, he still had to find Ding Xiaoyao. But it was undoubtedly almost impossible for him to find her on his own in the Central Divine Prefecture that was countless times larger than Pine Prefecture. He had to rely on others. Cloud Merchant Group's branch in Sky Capital City. And Nanjing and Yang Yi were alone in a room. She asked, "Are you worried about her?" Yang Yi nodded. The way she looked at me was very unfamiliar, extremely unfamiliar. She really didn't recognize me. It wasn't fake. And Nanjing spoke in a low voice. "Something has definitely happened to her." Yang Yi took a deep breath and walked over to Nanjing. He stretched out his hands and held her arms lightly as he spoke softly. "You know, I sometimes feel that I'm truly a failure, because I haven't been able to protect the people I should have protected in my life. Moreover, I frequently allow them to be injured. When I saw the state you were in at Sky Divine Hall, I truly hated myself. I really did." And Nanjing lowered her head slightly. "We're all too weak." Yang Yi nodded. "We are too weak indeed." His current strength was more than enough to deal with ordinary saints. But if he encountered some of the true experts amongst saints, like the patriarch of the Dragon Clan, Xianxia or Lady, he wouldn't even have the ability to fight back. Moreover, regardless of whether it was Heaven's gravestone or the sword spirit, they were external forces and not his own strength. As for the Xianxia, it was even worse, because using that fellow would be no different than bringing his enemies down with him. Besides those 3 trump cards, he had nothing else. And Nanjing suddenly asked, "What did you rely on to defeat Lu Qianxiao that day?" Yang Yi replied in a low voice, "The Brink Laws." And Nanjing was quite puzzled. "The Brink Laws?" Yang Yi nodded and explained. A long time passed before he and Nanjing said, "That law of yours is much stronger than Lu Qianxiao's laws of instinct." Yang Yi said, "It's much stronger indeed. Even my decay laws are probably inferior to the Brink Laws. The decay law's strength is practically fixed, but the Brink Laws isn't. It grows stronger along with my own strength." And Nanjing suddenly said, "Can it only be used on physical strength?" Yang Yi was slightly stunned. "What do you mean?" She didn't answer him but said something else. "Come. Release your sword intent." Even though Yang Yi was puzzled, he still did it. He immediately released his void rank sword intent, and then a strand of terrifying intent surged out from within a Nanjing. As soon as it appeared, Yang Ye's sword intent was instantly pushed back into his body. "You!" Yang Yi gazed at her with shock. He hadn't expected that a Nanjing's intent was actually so terrifying to the point that even his void rank sword intent was pushed back into him with such ease. That was simply like the void rank slaughter intent that he possessed after utilizing Heaven's gravestone. And Nanjing said, "My intent is a fusion of battle intent, spear intent, fist intent, and 3 other intents. The fusion of 6 intents has allowed the strength of my intent to far surpass other intents. Now, when I use fist intent, it's actually fist intent formed from the fusion of 6 types of different intents. If I use my spear, it would be enhanced by spear intent that's a fusion of 6 intents. Do you understand what I mean?" Yang Yi asked, "You're saying that the Brink Laws can be used on other things?" She nodded in response. "Right." Yang Ye's eyes flickered with excitement. Since strength could be condensed to the brink and released, then why couldn't the same be done to sword intent? Yang Yi noticed that a door had been opened to him, a door in the path of the sword Dao. Yang Yi took a deep breath and said, "I'm going into closed-door cultivation." And Nanjing nodded. "You can give it a try, but don't force it if you really can't do it. We're heading to White Deer Academy in 10 days. Yang Yi nodded. "Don't worry, I know my limits, right? You can try to learn the Brink Laws as well. It'll definitely be able to increase your strength immensely." She shook her head. "My body isn't strong enough. Can't endure my strength at all. If I were to condense my strength like you do, then I'll be the first to die." Yang Yi thought for a moment and said, "Right." He still remembered what happened when he first started to learn the Brink Laws. At that time, his strength had been fully converged on his fist, and he felt like he was about to explode apart. Moreover, he was completely exhausted once he released that energy. His body had already surpassed the bodies of saints then, yet such a situation had still occurred. So, if a Nanjing were to try, then her body would definitely be unable to endure it. The Brink Laws didn't just require peak control over strength, It required a body capable of enduring the condensed energy. Yang Yi felt that it was quite a pity because if a Nanjing could grasp the brink laws, then the results would definitely be extremely terrifying. As if she knew what he was thinking, and Nanjing spoke softly. I have my own inheritance, and once I gain thorough mastery of them, they won't be inferior to the brink laws at all. After all, Lu Qianxiao would have died at my hands if it wasn't for Lu Qianyun. Yang Yi nodded. I'm going to be cultivating behind closed doors. Wait for me. And Nanjing nodded. The beautiful woman from Cloud Merchant Group made arrangements for Yang Yi upon his request and got him a cultivation room. Yang Yi stood silently within the cultivation room for a very long time, and then his void-rank sword intent surged out from within him. Once it surged out of him, he started to slowly feel his sword intent before trying to condense it in the end. Of course, his sword intent couldn't be seen with the eye, and he could only sense its presence. His sword intent started to slowly condense under his control. Bang! Suddenly, an explosion resounded, and Yang Ye's figure was blasted away. At the same time, the entire room collapsed into pieces. Around 4 hours passed before Yang Yi crawled up from the ground, and his face was extremely pale while his mind still felt dizzy. He'd naturally failed. He'd failed to control it well when his sword intent had been condensed to a certain level, causing it to explode before him and blast him away. Moreover, the backlash from such an explosion was reflected directly on his spirit and soul. It was truly a terrible feeling. Yang Yi rested for around another hour before he got a new cultivation room and continued his cultivation. This time, he didn't dare to act so rashly as he had before this. He activated his sword domain before he started to release his sword intent, and his eyes instantly lit up after he condensed the sword intent within his sword domain for a while, because he noticed that his senses were over 10 times stronger while within the scope of his sword domain. To put it in simpler terms, he was even able to clearly sense the slightest change in his sword intent while it was within the scope of his sword domain. 10 times. What was that like? It meant that so long as he cultivated sword techniques or other techniques while within the scope of his sword domain, it would be at least 10 times easier than it would have been outside his sword domain. The sword domain. It had always been something that he felt was quite useless. But it turned out to be so terrifying. Of course, it hadn't been so terrifying in the past, and it was probably the rise in his cultivation that had made it so terrifying now. At this moment, Yang Yi couldn't help but call himself stupid, because he'd always been thinking about how to use the sword domain as a means of attack, but he'd never thought about its other abilities. He had used it to copy laws in the past, but how could there be so many laws for him to copy? No matter what, Yang Yi was overjoyed by this discovery, because he noticed that the sword domain wasn't useless anymore, and it was even more terrifying than he'd ever imagined. Now that he knew how to use the sword domain, his cultivation of any technique would be practically instantaneous. Sword intent was something that couldn't be seen yet could be sensed. As he sensed the sword intent around him, Yang Yi started to control it slowly and condense it. Even though his sword domain was there to suppress his sword intent, he still didn't dare act carelessly. Because if he condensed it to the point that his sword domain couldn't endure it, then he would be courting death. Because his mind was highly concentrated, cold sweat gradually appeared on Yang Ye's face, and there were even some threads of blood in his eyes. Even though he had the sword domain's assistance, he noticed that condensing sword intent really wasn't a simple task. Sword intent was unlike physical strength. It didn't just test his control, it tested his mental strength and soul as well. Fortunately, both of them were immensely improved while he was within the scope of his sword domain, and coupled with the fact that he'd brought his strength to the brink before, it was progressing very smoothly for now. The space in an area of 30 m around Yang Yi gradually started to tremble while more and more sweat appeared on Yang Ye's face. Time passed by slowly. The space around Yang Yi was still trembling, but it was only in an area of around 24 m now. After that, even though the trembling space around Yang Yi was growing smaller and smaller, the time he used to accomplish that grew longer and longer. For example, he'd use 2 hours to shrink it down from 30 m to 24 m, but it took an entire 6 hours to shrink it down to 21 m. Moreover, it took 20 hours to shrink it down from 21 m to 18 m. Even though it was taking longer and longer, Yang Yi was growing more and more excited. Because while his sword intent was being condensed incessantly, he noticed that its might was growing even more terrifying. That was a very understandable result. It was like a piece of scrap. If it was struck incessantly, tempered, and condensed, then it would become a sword in the end. At that time, while it would still be a piece of iron, its strength would be completely different. So, his act of condensing his sword intent right now was like a form of tempering to it. He was condensing it like a madman right now. Yang Yi noticed a problem during this process, and it was that while he'd comprehended sword intent, he'd never truly understood it. What was the essence of sword intent? Where did its strength come from? He wasn't able to answer such questions in the past. At this moment, he had to sense such ethereal sword intent within his sword domain, and then understand and control it for the sake of attaining Brink sword intent. Under such circumstances, he gradually gained some understanding of his sword intent. Sword intent was a form of intent, but such a description was quite general. Simply speaking, it was a type of will that was comprehended with the sword as its foundation. Will was like the aura. When one was in a superior position like that of an emperor, one would definitely possess an imposing aura of his own from having control of the lives of countless beings. Will and aura were almost the same. Couldn't be seen, but it really did exist, and it could even materialize when it arrived at a certain level. Sword intent, especially void rank sword intent, wasn't just material. During the process of condensing it, Yang Yi noticed why his void rank slaughter intent was stronger than his sword intent. It was none other than because his void rank slaughter intent was much more condensed than his sword intent. Now, he was bringing his sword intent to the brink, so the first thing he had to do was condense it. Day after day passed by, and 5 days passed in the blink of an eye. At this moment, the space around Yang Yi had calmed down completely, but Yang Yi's face had an extremely solemn expression on it. The Herculean sword was in his grasp, and it was trembling right now, because the sword intent around him had been condensed onto the Herculean sword. At this moment, his sword intent had arrived at its brink. How terrifying was it in such a state? In any case, Yang Yi felt that his sword domain was starting to become unstable. If he executed death by a thought right now, then its strength would probably increase by at least 50 times while enhanced by his void rank sword intent that was at its brink. It would truly kill in an instant. In the past, he only dared to utilize the brink laws once because his body would suffer injuries from it, and he needed quite a few days to recover. Yet now he could do it twice. One was the brink of strength, and the other was the brink of sword intent. The former required a powerful body, and it exhausted all his physical strength once he utilized it. As for the latter, it exhausted his mental strength and the strength of his soul. As for which was strong, it depended on his body. If his body was stronger, then the brink of his physical strength would be stronger. But if his sword intent was stronger, then the brink of his sword intent would be stronger. Of course, if he released his void rank slaughter intent and brought both intents to the brink, then it would definitely far surpass his physical strength's brink. If he were to add the brink of both intents to Heavenrend, then its strength. Yang Yi didn't dare think further, nor did he dare to put it into action, because based on his current strength, he would definitely cripple himself by doing that. Yang Yi remained silent for a long time before he started to disperse the brink sword intent on the Herculean sword. If it was in the past, he would naturally be unable to accomplish that. But he had the sword domain to suppress it, so it wasn't a problem now. After he dispersed it, Yang Yi started to condense his sword intent again. Firstly, he wasn't skilled at bringing his sword intent to the brink, and he'd used quite a few days to bring it to the brink. If he accomplished it at such a speed in battle, then what was the point of it? His enemy would have killed him a long time ago. Secondly, as he ceaselessly condensed his sword intent, he noticed that his sword intent seemed to be undergoing a transformation. This discovery made Yang Yi feel overjoyed. Regardless of whether it was the sword spirit or heaven's gravestone, they were external sources of strength. But his void rank sword intent and physical strength were his own. He was truly strong when they were strong. Just like that, Yang Yi started condensing his sword intent like a madman, and then he dispersed it, condensed it once more, 2 days later, Sky Capital City, the teleportation platform. Suddenly, a ray of dazzling blue light erupted from the teleportation formation, and then 3 men appeared there. They wore cloud-white robed, and there was a small character on their chests. The man who led the group glanced at the surroundings, and then he gazed at the young man on his left. Brother Lin, go find out the name and whereabouts of that fellow who offended our future sister-in-law. Even though our big brother disdains to deal with such people, we as his younger brothers can't just allow our future sister-in-law to be taken advantage of, right? The young man called Brother Lin chuckled. Brother Tanfeng, do you think our big brother and sister-in-law Xiao Yushi will really be united? What nonsense is that? Tanfeng scolded with a smile on his face. Our big brother is on the martial rankings. To be a little blunt and disrespectful, sister-in-law Xiao Yushi is lucky that our big brother fancies her. Even though she has refused him in the past, I believe that so long as she gets to know him for some time, then she'll definitely submit before him. Tanfeng grinned at this point. See, the Thousand Crane Sect sent her in the group that came to watch our academy's competition. What does that mean? It means that the Thousand Crane Sect wants her to be united with our big brother as well. So, she can't escape being our sister-in-law. I presume that they'll be united once the matter with Ocean of Clouds Academy is resolved. Ocean of Clouds Academy? There was a wisp of disdain in Brother Lin's eyes. I really don't understand why they agreed to that fellow Xianxia's request. Isn't it easier to just send someone to crush such a trash academy? Tanfeng shook his head. We naturally don't care about such nobodies. The reason we agreed to their request seems to be because of an agreement between our higher-ups and the scholarly faction. Alright, let's not waste our time on this. Quickly go find out where they are so that we can leave once we're done. That's not a problem. Brother Lin chuckled and vanished on the spot. Cloud Merchant Group's branch in Sky Capital City. Because the competition in White Deer Academy was about starting soon, Yang Yi and Nanjing and even Shiwushen were cultivating madly. In a hall, the gray-robed old man stood before the beautiful woman as he spoke in a low voice. Eldest young miss, are you really going to do that? She remained silent for a long time before she nodded. There's no gain without risk. If we win the gamble, then it won't just bring endless benefits to us. I'll be able to become a manager as well. But if you lose the gamble, then you'll definitely lose all your authority and never be given any position again. The gray-robed old man spoke solemnly. It might even affect the patriarch. The beautiful woman closed her eyes and remained silent. The gray-robed old man continued. Their strength is not bad indeed, but there are all sorts of experts hidden within White Deer Academy. Most importantly, the law faction has 2 monstrous geniuses on the martial rankings. Can they rival those 2 geniuses? At the very least, based on the strength they've revealed until now, I think they are still quite weak when compared to those experts on the martial rankings. The woman still remained silent. The old man was about to say something else when his expression suddenly changed slightly, and he turned around to look out of the hall. Someone is here, and they're here with ill intent. She opened her eyes and said, Come, let's go have a look. Both of them had just left the hall when they saw Tanfeng's group of 3, and the beautiful woman immediately frowned. White Deer Academy. Have they already found out about Yang Yi and the others' identities? Tanfeng's gaze descended onto the beautiful woman, and he chuckled. I never expected it to be someone beautiful like you. I like women like you. Ha ha ha. Let's get down to business. Is that fellow called Yi Yang here? The old man stepped forward and spoke in a low voice. Mind your manners. Tanfeng spoke coldly. My law faction has never cared about its manners when doing things. Then allow me to teach you a little. The old man's figure shot towards them. Tanfeng laughed coldly, and then he transformed into a ray of light that slammed against the old man. Bang! A huge explosion resounded, and then the old man moved backwards repeatedly. He was only able to stop himself when he arrived before the wall, and his right palm was gone. A mid-rank saint? Tanfeng played with the white dagger which had suddenly appeared in his grasp and said, How weak! You used medicinal pills to get where you are, right? The old man's face fell. He was about to attack, but he suddenly stopped and looked towards the distance. Yang Yi was walking over slowly from there. Yang Yi gazed at Tan Feng. "You're looking for me?" Tan Feng gazed at Yang Yi and asked, "You're Yi Yang?" Yang Yi nodded. Tan Feng asked, "You're the one who offended my sister-in-law?" Yang Yi was puzzled. "Your sister-in-law?" Tan Feng replied, "The Thousand Crane Sect's Xiao Yushi is my sister-in-law." Yang Ye's eyes narrowed. "Who's your older brother?" Mo Yun Tian. A slight smile curled up on the corners of Tan Feng's mouth. "Who does he think he is?" Yang Ye's voice resounded. "Who does he think he is?" The corners of the old man and beautiful woman's eyes twitched when they heard Yang Yi. After all, Mo Yun Tian was an expert on the martial rankings. What was being on the martial rankings like? There were billions in the Central Divine Prefecture, but only 50 could ascend the martial rankings. It could be said that only extraordinary geniuses amongst geniuses could be ranked on the martial rankings. Such geniuses would definitely become an extraordinary expert in the future. The facts proved that it really was the case, because many of the top-rate experts in the Central Divine Prefecture were once ranked on the martial rankings. Moreover, while there were many diamond rank powers in the Central Divine Prefecture, very few amongst them possessed disciples who were able to be ranked on the rankings. Just like White Deer Academy. It was called the #1 academy of the Central Divine Prefecture, but merely 3 of its geniuses were able to ascend the martial rankings. That clearly showed how terrifying it was. At this moment, Yang Yi had actually insulted Mo Yun Tian, who'd ascended the rankings, so the beautiful woman and the others really wanted to know what Yang Yi thought of Mo Yun Tian. Tan Feng and the others instantly revealed gloomy expressions when they heard Yang Yi, and a short while passed before Tan Feng said, "You!" He was about to speak, but Yang Yi had already vanished on the spot. At this moment, Tan Feng's expression changed violently, and he swiftly waved his dagger forward. A ray of cold light flashed, but it vanished just a moment later, and then a fist arrived before him. Crack! The powerful force within the fist instantly caused the space around Tan Feng to crack apart. A wisp of astonishment flashed through his eyes. He'd never imagined that Yang Ye's strength was actually at such a level. He didn't dare act carelessly at all, and the profound energy within him surged into the dagger before he swung it swiftly. Clang! Bang! The dagger broke, and then blood sprayed from Tan Feng's mouth while his figure was blasted flying. He'd been defeated with a single punch. The gray-robed old man and the beautiful woman were stunned. Even though Tan Feng was a high-rank half-saint, his strength was absolutely sufficient to crush saints. After all, the geniuses fostered by a diamond rank power like White Crane Academy couldn't be judged based on convention. All of them possessed the best resources and the best techniques, and they had countless formidable teachers. They received the best. However, it was such a genius that had been defeated with just a single punch. The others who'd come here with Tan Feng were stunned. They'd never imagined that Tan Feng would have actually been defeated just like that. After all, Tan Feng was ranked in the top 20 of the Law faction. Who is he? Tan Feng was slightly stunned. Indeed, he was stunned by Yang Ye's blow. He was very confident in his own ability, and unless he encountered one of those saints who had never relied on external forces to attain the saint realm, he didn't take ordinary saints seriously at all. However, he'd actually been defeated by a single punch from a half-saint. Yang Yi was about to launch another attack when the beautiful woman suddenly spoke. "Young Master Yi, can you give me some face?" Yang Yi stopped and looked at her. She said, "They are students from White Deer Academy, and they are inner court students at the very least. My merchant group will probably face some trouble if they die here." Yang Yi shrugged. He was about to say something when the old man by the beautiful woman's side suddenly cried out involuntarily, "Young Master Yi, watch out!" Tan Feng appeared behind Yang Yi at the same instant that the old man had finished speaking, and a dagger pressed against Yang Ye's neck. At the same time, Tan Feng's ferocious voice resounded from behind Yang Yi. "You fucking..." However, he hadn't even finished speaking when his figure was blasted flying. Everyone here was stunned. It was especially so for the old man. His eyes were filled with astonishment because only he had seen what happened clearly. It was exactly because he'd seen it that he was extremely shocked. Yang Yi and Tan Feng had attacked at the exact same time that Tan Feng spoke. However, Yang Yi was completely unharmed when Tan Feng's dagger swiped at his throat. Is he even human? Yang Yi turned around to gaze at Tan Feng, and the latter was spitting out blood incessantly. His stomach had sunken down completely, and the force of Yang Ye's fist had caused all his internal organs to crack apart. Yang Ye's figure flashed towards Tan Feng. Meanwhile, the other two from White Deer Academy suddenly obstructed Yang Ye's path. Brother Lin said, "We were rash and reckless in this matter. I hope that perhaps nothing would have happened if you said that earlier. But now? Ha ha ha." The two of them were instantly blasted flying once Yang Yi finished speaking, and their figures exploded into countless bits in midair. Meanwhile, Yang Yi had arrived in front of Tan Feng, and then he stomped his foot down towards Tan Feng's head. The Law Faction. In Yang Ye's opinion, the Law Faction was his enemy, because he was very clearly aware that the Law Faction would definitely annihilate Ocean of Cloud's Academy and City if he died. Moreover, he was sure that the Law Faction would definitely not show him any mercy during the competition in White Deer Academy. Since it was like that, why should he show any mercy? 1 or 100 deaths didn't make a difference to him. In any case, he would be killing them, so why not kill all of them? Bang! Yang Ye's foot didn't hit its target because Tan Feng had vanished on the spot, and the space beneath his foot instantly collapsed. Yang Yi looked up into the sky, and he saw a huge palm tear through space and claw at him. Yang Ye's eyes narrowed slightly. He suddenly stomped his right foot against the ground, and he shot into the sky like a cannonball and collided with the huge palm. Bang! A huge explosion resounded as the palm exploded into pieces. Yang Yi descended to the ground. At this moment, an old man in luxurious robes had appeared around 30 m away from him. The old man glanced at Yang Yi, and then tossed Tan Feng on the ground before he said, "As a student of the Law Faction, you actually sought help from the Academy, and your enemy is merely a half-saint. What an accomplishment!" Tan Feng was livid, but he didn't dare to talk back. The old man paid no further attention to Tan Feng, and he gazed at Yang Yi instead. "You actually dared to kill members of my White Deer Academy? You're quite brave indeed. I hope your strength is on par with your courage." He was about to attack at this point, but the beautiful woman suddenly said, "Senior, this matter. You can just shut your mouth." The old man interrupted her and spoke coldly, "I don't want to listen to your nonsense. All I know is that he killed students of my White Deer Academy, and they even were students of my Law Faction. As for the two of you, I'll spare your lives out of consideration for Cloud Merchant Group. But don't let me see any of you in Sky Capital City again. Otherwise, I won't give face to anyone." The woman and old man's faces fell. Meanwhile, Yang Yi suddenly chuckled. "While I was still in Pine Prefecture, I heard how arrogant your Law Faction is. Now that I've witnessed it for myself, it really is true." Pine Prefecture? The old man sized up Yang Yi for a long time, and then he spoke in a low voice. "Your body is comparable to a saint, and you're from Pine Prefecture. You're Yang Yi." Tan Feng was stunned when he heard this, and he gazed at Yang Yi with disbelief. Yang Yi was slightly stunned as well, and then he said, "How did you know?" "It really is you," the old man continued. "I never expected that you would already be in the Central Divine Prefecture. You're quite brave and you have a little strength as well. No wonder you dared to boast like that. However, you'll realize how laughable and ignorant you are. I won't kill you today. I'll see you in my academy in 2 days." As soon as he finished speaking, the old man's figure flashed as he intended to leave. Suddenly, a ray of light flashed, and then Tan Feng's head suddenly flew up into the air while he followed the old man. The old man stopped moving, and his face was gloomy. Yang Yi smiled. "Go back and tell those so-called geniuses of your Law Faction to wait for me. If it wasn't for certain reasons, I would have killed you already." The old man gazed gloomily at Yang Yi. "But it's fine. I can let you live 2 more days." The old man vanished on the spot once he finished speaking. The beautiful woman spoke softly. "Are you confident?" Yang Yi naturally knew what she was talking about, and he immediately shook his head. Both the woman and the gray-robed old man were stunned, and she said, You aren't confident. Yang Yi replied, I've met one of the members of the law faction, and his strength was really not bad. Moreover, he was only ranked at the 15th position within the law faction. So, I can imagine how strong the other students ranked higher than him are. She spoke solemnly. To be honest, if this is the extent of your strength, then it's far from sufficient. Yang Yi grinned and didn't say anything. He really wasn't confident in winning the competition. After all, White Deer Academy couldn't be compared to Ocean of Clouds Academy. There definitely were many geniuses amongst them who surpassed Lu Qianxiao or were much more terrifying than him. However, Yang Yi had no other choice. Not to mention geniuses on par with Lu Qianxiao. He would still head to White Deer Academy to participate in the competition even if he had to face an emperor. Because if he didn't, then the battlefield would be moved to Ocean of Cloud City. But if he came here, then the battlefield would be in White Deer Academy. Ocean of Clouds Academy and City really couldn't endure any more battles. The beautiful woman suddenly said, Right. I gained some information about that other woman you asked me search for. Ding Xiaoyao. Yang Yi gazed at her. Do you have her whereabouts? She shook her head. I only know that she once appeared in a rival city. A rival city? Yang Yi frowned. That city which every single person from the lower dimensions would arrive at? She nodded in response. Your friend is from the lower dimensions? Yang Yi nodded. She glanced at Yang Yi, remained silent for a long time, and then said, Xiao Yushi might be from the lower dimensions as well. Yang Yi replied, She always was. The beautiful woman blurted out, You're from there as well? Yang Yi glanced at her and nodded. So that's why. She nodded. I understand now. Ha ha ha. Suddenly, numerous sounds of laughter resounded in the sky. Where's Yang Yi? Where's that fellow Yang Yi who said that he would crush our law faction? Come on. Quickly come out here and let us meet you. As soon as that voice finished resounded, over a dozen rays of light shot down from the sky. Rumble. The entire branch of Cloud Merchant Group was instantly obliterated. At the same time, countless shrill cries resounded throughout the area. Only 5 people remained on the ruins of Cloud Merchant Group's branch here, and it was Xianxia's group of 3, the beautiful woman, and the gray-robed old man. Besides them, everyone within the entire branch had been buried beneath the rubble. There had been a few thousand people in the branch before this. Yang Yi hadn't expected this, and neither had the old man and beautiful woman. They hadn't expected the students of White Deer Academy to attack Cloud Merchant Group's branch, and even launch such a lethal attack. Yang Yi slowly clenched his fists, and he looked up towards the source of the voice. Over 20 cultivators in gray-robed had appeared not too far away from him. There were men and women amongst them, and there was a small character embroidered on their clothes. You're Yang Yi. The young man who led the group and held an iron rod in his hand sized up Yang Yi, and then chuckled. Did you slam your head against a wall when you were young? Brother Lin Yu. Why do you say so? The person who spoke these words was a man standing by the young man with the iron rod, and he was holding a dagger instead. If he hadn't slammed his head against a wall, then would he boast about crushing our law faction? The man called Lin Yu roared with laughter. I think that he might have been kicked in the head by a donkey. Ha ha ha. TSK, so that fellow is Yang Yi. He doesn't seem special at all. Why did he dare to boast like that? I really don't understand. Hey Yang Yi, can you tell me why you dared to say something like that? Did you really slam your head against a wall? Ha ha ha. I think that there's no need to wait 2 more days. We can just deal with him today. What do all of you think? That's a good idea, right? Let's allow him to speak his last words. Otherwise, people would say that we of the law faction are inhumane. Yang Yi glanced at them and remained silent for a while before he spoke. I'm your target. So why kill the members of Cloud Merchant Group? Yang Yi wasn't a kind-hearted person, but he didn't like dragging others down. The members of Cloud Merchant Group? Lin Yu glanced at Yang Yi and feigned surprise. Oh my! I never expected that there would be others here. Oh my! I'm so sorry. We were too excited when we heard that you were here, so we accidentally used too much force. Alas, we really didn't do it on purpose. If you don't like it, then come hit us. Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. Come hit us. Ha ha ha. I've wanted to have a spar with you for a long time. Come. I can't restrain myself any longer. Come and beat us up with all your might. I can't fucking take these idiots anymore. Xianxia stomped his right foot against the ground and shot forward. Don't leave a single one of them alive. We'll start today with 20 heads. Xianxia's voice was still resounding through the air when he vanished on the spot. He was already within the group when he appeared once more, and then a figure was blasted away. A ray of light flashed through the air, and the head of that student from White Deer Academy was instantly separated from his body. Blood sprayed out like a fountain. Kill! A vicious glow flashed through Lin Yu's eyes when he saw Yang Yi and Xianxia attack them, and he was about to attack. However, the sound of air being torn apart resounded, and then a spar instantly appeared before him. Lin Yu was shocked and didn't dare act carelessly at all. He swiftly swung his iron rod down. Bang! The iron rod instantly cracked apart while the powerful force of the collision blasted him flying. Meanwhile, Yang Yi suddenly appeared behind him. Lin Yu's pupils constricted, and it was the last expression in his eyes because a fist had smashed against his back. Bang! Lin Yu's figure exploded into pieces, and countless pieces of flesh and innards rained down from the sky. The other students from the law faction were horrified when they witnessed this scene. At this moment, no matter how stupid they were, they knew that they'd underestimated their enemies, and they'd even severely underestimated their enemies. Moreover, around 5 or 6 out of their group of 20 had already been killed in just a few breaths of time. When they faced Xianxia's group, and especially when they faced Yang Yi and Nanjing, many of them didn't even have the ability to fight back. At this moment, the over a dozen students who still remained were filled with fear and intended to retreat. Retreat! One of them suddenly shouted. However, he'd only just shouted when a spear pierced through his chest, and his figure stiffened before crashing down from the sky. Kill whoever flees first. Xianxia's voice resounded, and then he pressed his index and middle finger together before swinging it forward. A ray of sword energy shot out from the tip of his finger, and then the head of a student who was almost 1 kilometer away instantly flew up into the air. It wasn't mere sword energy. It was even enhanced by void rank sword intent. Moreover, his void rank sword intent was a few times stronger than what it had been. It was a slaughter. It was an absolute slaughter. The students of White Deer Academy were like helpless sheep before the joint forces of Xianxia's group, and it caused the gray-robed old man and beautiful woman to be stunned on the spot. A short while passed before the gray-robed old man gazed at Yang Yi and Nanjing, and he gulped before he said, "Are they too strong? Or are those students too weak? They should be just outer court students." She spoke solemnly. "However, they shouldn't be slaughtered just like that." Her voice clearly carried shock in it. The beautiful woman remained silent for a moment before a wisp of resolve flashed through her eyes. "Give the order for all the branches under my management to accept bets. The winning rate for those who bet on White Deer Academy will be 100 to number 10 to 1. As for Ocean of Clouds Academy, it'll be 1 to 1. Eldest young miss. You!" The gray-robed old man's eyes were filled with shock. Such odds represented that the beautiful woman felt that Xianxia's group had a very good chance to win. Of course, he was truly shocked by the fact that they would be finished if they lost this gamble. He didn't even have to give it a moment's thought to realize that countless people would bet on White Deer Academy once betting was allowed. At that time, if Xianxia's group were to lose, they would truly be finished, and it might even shake the foundation of her clan. The beautiful woman took a deep breath and said, "Our ancestor once said that the cowardly die of hunger, and the brave have too much. There is no reward without risk. I am willing to bet with my future on the line." The gray-robed old man hesitated for a moment, and then he nodded. "Then let's go all out. I'll give the orders." She nodded, and then she looked up into the sky. At this moment, only 3 students from White Deer Academy remained. They didn't choose to flee because they noticed that their speed couldn't compare to Xianxia's attacks. Anyone who fled would be the first to die. In less than 10 minutes, only 3 from their group of 20 remained. Hiss! Bang! 2 figures were blasted flying. One had a hole pierced through his chest, and the other lost his head. Just like that, only a female student from White Deer Academy remained here. She was around the age of 20, and she was holding a sword tightly with both hands. Even though she seemed to be very firm and strong on the outside, her trembling sword betrayed her. I can't do something like ruthlessly crushing a beauty. Xianxia shook his head and moved aside. Do you think she would have shown mercy if you lost? Xianxia glanced at Xianxia and was about to attack. However, the space in the sky suddenly trembled. And then the old man in luxurious robes who just left a while ago had appeared here once more. A ferocious expression instantly appeared on his face when he saw what had happened here. Xianxia, you're courting death. The old man was about to attack, but Xianxia suddenly shot forward and slammed his fist towards the old man. Meanwhile, Nanjing didn't stand by idly, and she tossed Sky Split at the old man at the same time that Xianxia had attacked. Sky Split instantly arrived before the old man, and it was even slightly faster than Xianxia. The old man was astounded. Even he felt his heart palpitate before the energy contained within the spear. He didn't dare collide directly with it and intended to dodge it. However, 2 terrifying waves of intent suddenly pressed down upon him. The old man was horrified. Bang! Sky Split slammed against the old man's chest and blasted him flying. However, Sky Split wasn't able to pierce through the old man because a ray of golden light had surged out from him at the critical moment. That golden light had stopped Sky Split. Meanwhile, the old man had just heaved a sigh of relief when his pupils suddenly constricted, and his hairs stood on end. At the same time, he swiftly turned around and slapped his palm forward. Bang! As soon as his palm moved forward, a fist instantly arrived before it and slammed against it. Crack! The sound of bones breaking resounded as the old man's figure flew backwards. Meanwhile, Nanjing suddenly appeared behind him, and her spear swept against his back. Bang! The old man's eyes opened wide as his figure crashed down to the ground, and his fate was unknown. Xianxia was just about to launch another attack when the space high above him suddenly split apart, and then a huge palm stretched out from within the crack and slapped down towards him. Is White Deer Academy filled with such shameless people? If one fails, a group comes. If a group fails, then the old comes. If the old fails, then an even older one comes. As soon as Xianxia finished speaking, the ancient sheath appeared in his grasp. He sheathed an intense sword within it before swiftly drawing it. 80 overlapped heaven rends. OM! A sword howl shot up into the sky as a beam of sword energy tore through the air and smashed against the huge palm. A moment of silence ensued before the palm exploded into bits. Xianxia, my law faction underestimated you a little. A voice resounded in the sky. Xianxia paid no attention to the voice, and he just turned around to look at the old man who was lying there on the ground. He flicked a strand of sword energy over, and the old man's head was instantly separated from his body. Xianxia turned around and looked at Xianxia. String up their heads. How can we go empty-handed to White Deer Academy? We'll give them a great gift. Xianxia's expression changed when he heard Xianxia. Isn't that a little too overbearing? That's exactly what I want. Xianxia slowly closed his eyes. He wasn't a fool, so he naturally wouldn't do something meaningless. There was no chance of reconciliation between him and the law faction, and even if he wanted to, he would only be asking for insult by suggesting it. Besides that, the law faction's strength far surpassed Ocean of Clouds Academy, so it would have no chance of surviving if they went to war with the law faction. Under such circumstances, he had to get help. Who was that help? It was naturally the scholarly faction. The scholarly faction was at odds with the law faction, so the only way to resist the law faction was to join forces with the scholarly faction. But Ocean of Clouds Academy was weak, so was it qualified to join forces with the scholarly faction? It wasn't. Now, he was creating that qualification. Xianxia was from the scholarly faction, so Ocean of Clouds Academy was a branch of the scholarly faction in the eyes of the scholarly faction. That was exactly why it had been constantly protecting Ocean of Cloud's academy throughout these years. So, killing members of the law faction could be considered as an internal matter of White Deer Academy in the end. Thus, it would only infuriate the law faction and not the scholarly faction. It was even to the extent that he believed many in the scholarly faction would be happy to see the law faction suffer. In short, the stronger he was, the greater value he had, and the greater the chances that the scholarly faction would protect both him and Ocean of Cloud's academy. This was how the world was. If you were worth it, then others would naturally invest in you. Whether reality was cruel or not depended on one's own ability. Xianxia glanced at Yang Yi and said, "I feel like I'm growing bolder and bolder while I'm by your side." He turned around and walked away as he spoke, and it didn't take long for him to string up the 20 heads. Law faction, aren't you very ruthless? Let's see who's the most ruthless now. Yang Yi didn't choose to fly, and he just left Xianxia and Nanjing through the streets towards the teleportation formation. Eldest young miss. He's a madman. The gray-robed old man's voice was trembling slightly, because not only had Yang Yi killed the members of the law faction, he was even doing such a thing. He clearly intended to infuriate the entire law faction. Moreover, no one in history had even humiliated the law faction like this. The beautiful woman gazed at Yang Ye's vanishing figure for a long time, and then she said, "Elder Qi, send someone to Pine Prefecture and gather every single bit of information about him. We know too little about him." The gray-robed old man nodded lightly. "I'll get it done well. But are you really going to accept those bets?" She spoke solemnly. "Yes, the sooner the better. As for the funds, I can gather 100,000 violet crystals. But that's probably far from sufficient. Send a message to my younger sister and father, and tell them that I need their help. Since we can't use the group's funds, then we'll use our own. If we win, Father will be able to maintain his position as the president for another 20 years at least." Elder Qi hesitated. "But if we lose, there's no reward without risk." She continued, "Give 500 extreme-grade energy stones each as compensation to the family of all the deceased. Moreover, all the branches under my management are to reject the students from White Deer Academy. Besides that, notify my father about what happened here and ask him to hold a meeting with the elders. Tell him to pressure White Deer Academy, and it's best if they decide to fully ban students of White Deer Academy from our cloud merchant group. I'll do it right away." Elder Qi turned around and left. The woman gazed at the direction Yang Yi had left towards, and she spoke softly, "If you win, my family will prosper, and I'll give you a great gift in return." And Nanjing walked by Yang Ye's side without a shred of emotion on her face. As for Xianxia, who was on Yang Ye's right, the corners of his mouth were twitching incessantly because he was dragging 20 heads along with him. All along the way, countless gazes were sizing him up incessantly, and it made him feel absolutely uncomfortable. Suddenly, someone in the surrounding crowd shouted, "Those are students from White Deer Academy." Clamorous noise immediately swept through the surroundings. After that, another person's voice resounded. "It really is students of White Deer Academy. The first head belongs to an outer court disciple called Tan Feng. I know him because we participated in White Deer Academy's recruitment tests together." Why has he been beheaded? That third head belongs to Ming Jian. I've been to White Deer Dimension in the past, and I met him there. Why has he? All of them seem to be from White Deer Academy's law faction. Astounded voices resounded incessantly throughout the surroundings, and it didn't take long for their gazes to descend onto Yang Yi. Who exactly are those fellows? They actually dare to insult the law faction like this? Are they tired of living? Fool! Since they dared to do that, they naturally have something to rely on. I just wonder which power they are from. The Nether Pavilion? The Martial Sect? The Devil Path? The Evil Faction? Those powers do possess the strength to look down on White Deer Academy, but they don't seem to be from any of those powers. Are they members of the 4 great clans? Why guess blindly? They clearly seem like they are heading to White Deer Dimension. Wouldn't we be able to find out if we follow them? Let's go. Just like that, more and more were following behind Xianxia's group. It didn't take long for Yang Yi to reach the teleportation platform. This time, they didn't encounter any problems. It didn't take long after they walked into the teleportation formation for a ray of blue light to surge out from the formation and envelop them. In an instant, they vanished from the platform. White Deer Dimension. White Deer Dimension was an independent dimension that the experts of White Deer Academy had established. It was as huge as Pine Prefecture, and a few billion lived here. Besides a few diamond rank powers, most diamond rank powers established their own independent dimension, and then allowed countless people to live there. The objective behind this was naturally to foster geniuses. Everyone's sect and clan needed talented individuals, and it needed an unending supply of talented individuals to guarantee its prosperity and avoid falling into decline. So, besides fighting for resources, the various powers throughout the Radiant Dimension fought for talented individuals. If they were to fight for such talented individuals in the Central Divine Prefecture, then it would definitely throw the entire prefecture into chaos. So, many diamond rank powers established their own independent dimensions and fostered their own geniuses. In that way, they could avoid fighting others for these geniuses, and it made the people who lived here have a sense of belonging. After quite some time passed, Yang Yi slowly opened his eyes. At this moment, he was on a teleportation platform, and a city stood before him. White Deer City. It belongs to White Deer Academy. Xianxia said, "We have to pass through that city and Ascension Mountain to get to White Deer Academy. Ascension Mountain is a path of trials, and it's used as a test by White Deer Academy. Any resident of White Deer Dimension that passes through Ascension Mountain has a chance to join White Deer Academy. It can be said that it's a path for the residents of White Deer Dimension to ascend, because their destiny would be changed if they are able to pass through it." Yang Yi glanced at Xianxia and said, "You know quite a bit about White Deer Academy, huh?" Xianxia shook his head. "Since I decided to come here with you, how could I not make any preparations? Right, that city is covered by a formation that was set up by an emperor. Even saints can't fly in the city. Actually, I should say that it's impossible to fly throughout White Deer Dimension. So we have no choice but to walk there." Yang Yi nodded and said, "Let go and take a look at the so-called geniuses of the Law faction." Yang Yi had just finished speaking when a few figures suddenly shot out from the city. They were extremely swift, and it only took them 2 breaths of time to traverse 3 kilometers and arrive before Xianxia's group. There were 3 men and 2 women in the group. Moreover, one of the women was that exact same woman that Yang Yi and the others hadn't killed at Sky Capital City earlier. The 5 of them glanced at Xianxia's group, and then their gazes descended onto the string that Xianxia was holding. Their gazes moved along the string to the area behind Xianxia, and their faces turned gloomy when they saw the 20 bloody heads that were tied to it. The man who led the group gazed at Yang Yi and said, "You're Yang Yi, right? Needless to say, we really did underestimate you. We didn't just underestimate your strength, we underestimated your courage as well." Yang Yi gazed at the man and said, "And you'll pay for what you've done." The man stared fixedly at Yang Yi and said, "My Law faction has sent experts to Pine Prefecture. Don't worry, we won't attack Ocean of Clouds Academy and City before you die. However, we'll make all of them accompany you once you're dead. What do you think? We're kind to you, right? Ha ha ha. We'll be waiting for you in the academy." He intended to leave after he finished speaking. Meanwhile, Yang Yi's voice resounded abruptly. "Did I say you can leave?" Yang Yi had just finished speaking when Sky Split suddenly left in Nanjing's grasp. It transformed into a ray of light that instantly stabbed into the man's chest, and then it took his figure flying and nailed him against the walls of White Deer City. The man's eyes were opened wide and filled with disbelief. He'd never imagined that he would die just like that from speaking a few words. Xianxia shook his head. "That's what you get for trying to put on a show of strength. Now you're dead, huh?" The other 4 were shocked, and they were about to flee. However, Yang Yi and Nanjing took a step forward simultaneously, and then 2 waves of terrifying intent surged out from within them and enveloped the other 4 students. One of the women in their group immediately slumped down to the ground beneath the pressure from these 2 types of intent. Meanwhile, a few rays of light flashed, Hiss! 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 Their heads were instantly severed from their bodies and rolled off to the side. Yang Yi gazed at Xu Wuxin. String them up. Xu Wuxin glanced at Yang Yi and said, "Both of you are crazy." He started to string their heads up while he spoke. Yang Yi paid no attention to Xu Wuxin, and he just looked up towards the sky for a moment before he said, "White Deer Academy. I, Yang Yi, am here." His voice was enhanced by profound energy, so it swept towards the surroundings like a thunderclap. A moment of silence ensued. Swish, swish, swish. Countless rays of light appeared in the sky, and they shot through the sky and flashed towards Yang Ye's group. Even if they were very far away, Yang Yi and the others could still sense their formidable auras with absolute clarity. "They're coming at us for real now." Xu Wuxin had a solemn expression on his face. It didn't take long for a few hundred cultivators in gray robes to arrive outside the city. Yang Ye's gaze descended onto the saber-wielding man who led the group. Because he was a saint, an innate saint, Yang Ye's eyes narrowed slightly. They're finally getting serious? Right, if they continue sending outer court students like the students from before, then wouldn't the law faction's higher-ups be fools? "You're Yang Yi." The man who held a saber in his hand gazed at Yang Yi. "I'm Zhuoshang, the head student of the outer court." Yang Yi asked, "One of the students from your outer court said that your law faction has sent its forces to Pine Prefecture. I'd like to know if that's true." "Is it?" Zhuoshang continued. "But we've summoned them back. Since my law faction has agreed to compete with your Ocean of Clouds Academy, it would naturally not go back on its word. Of course, we won't spare Ocean of Clouds Academy and City if you die. So, it's in your best interest to keep yourself alive. But it seems like you don't have the ability to do so." Yang Yi glanced at Zhuoshang and the others. "Are all of you going to come at us at once? Or will you fight us one-on-one?" Clamorous noise resounded throughout the surroundings. "Who does he think he is? Zhuoshang, don't waste your breath on him and just kill him. If you don't, then I will. That's the best joke I've ever heard. They intend to fight all of us by themselves? Who does he think he is? An expert ranked in the top 10 of the martial rankings? How laughable. There's no need to wait 2 days. Let's deal with him right now. If we don't make him pay for killing members of our outer court, then those fellows from the scholarly faction would probably ridicule us." "Kill him!" Countless students behind Zhuoshang started shouting. However, Zhuoshang remained silent. He was sizing up Yang Yi and Nanjing incessantly. At his level of strength, he was able to instinctively sense people or things that were a threat to him. At this moment, Yang Yi and Nanjing felt extremely dangerous to him. He knew that the information which came from Pine Prefecture wasn't accurate. Yang Yi wasn't weak, and he was extremely strong instead. Yang Yi chuckled and took a step forward. "Didn't you law faction speak about killing me? Didn't it want to show me how powerful it is? Come on, let me see exactly what sort of trash fills the law faction." How could they endure what Yang Yi had said? They immediately disregarded Zhuoshang and charged at Yang Yi like madmen. "Jinger, keep that fellow busy." As soon as he spoke, and Nanjing stomped her right foot against the ground and shot forward. Zhuoshang's eyes narrowed slightly, and then a wisp of ferocity flashed through them as he swung the saber in his grasp. Clang! The spear and saber collided, and an explosion rumbled like a thunderclap. After that, Zhuoshang took around 10 steps back while Nanjing didn't move at all. Moreover, Nanjing had even charged forward again while he moved backwards, and she appeared in front of him. A ferocious expression instantly covered Zhuoshang's face. "Bring it on!" As soon as he spoke, he shot forward and entered into combat with Nanjing. Meanwhile, a cold glow flashed through Yang Ye's eyes as he watched the other outer court students charge towards him. And then a blue sword chest appeared on his back. OM! A moment later, a sword howl shot into the air, and it seemed like it would tear the world apart. After that, over 3,000 rays of light shot out from the sword chest and entered the group of outer court students. Hiss! 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 Sword energy suffused the surroundings while countless rays of light formed crosses that flashed through the air. Not to mention cultivators, Even space was sliced apart with ease before these rays of light. In an instant, countless shrill cries resounded within world erase. However, there were still some students charging out of the slaughter formation and towards Yang Yi. Xu Wuxian tightened his grip on his spear, and then his figure shot forward and attacked them. Yang Yi paid no attention to them and continued controlling the saint-rank swords to kill everything before him. In less than 3 breaths of time, over 100 had died. Stop! Suddenly, a furious howl resounded from the sky, and then an old man appeared here. The old man waved his right hand, and the saint-rank swords instantly froze on the spot before all of them exploded into pieces. Xianxia's eyes narrowed slightly while a trace of seriousness arose within them. The old man was a high-rank saint at the very least, and he was no ordinary high-rank saint. The old man glanced coldly at Yang Yi, and then he slapped his palm towards the other side. And Nanjing's expression instantly changed while she fought Wuxiang, and her spear, which was stabbing towards Wuxiang, suddenly turned and stabbed towards her right. Bang! A muffled bang resounded as sky split shook, and Nanjing was blasted backwards. She moved almost 1 kilometer back before she could finally stop herself. Yang Ye's face fell, and the ancient sheath appeared in his grasp. A moment later, an intense sword condensed within his grasp, and then he sheathed it and drew it swiftly. OM! A ray of sword energy shot forward. It was 70 overlapped heaven rens. The old man's face fell when he saw Yang Yi draw his sword, and then a wisp of surprise flashed through the old man's eyes when he saw that ray of sword energy. You have some ability indeed, but you overestimate your strength. As soon as he finished speaking, the old man stretched his right hand forward and made a grabbing motion. In an instant, Yang Ye's sword energy exploded into pieces. However, the powerful force within it pushed the old man around 10 steps back. Suddenly, a Nanjing appeared in front of the old man, and then she stabbed Sky Split forward. The old man's eyes narrowed slightly, while a wisp of gloominess flashed within them. Fuck off! He slapped his palm forward at the exact same moment that he finished speaking. Bang! Sky Split shook violently while a Nanjing was blasted over 30 m back. On the other hand, the old man's palm had cracked apart slightly, and blood was seeping out of the cracks. You're courting death. The old man's face instantly turned fierce when he saw himself getting injured, and he was about to attack. But his eyes suddenly opened wide because Yang Yi had suddenly appeared behind him, and then a sword arrived at his nape. The old man's reaction wasn't slow. His figure moved slightly to the side and avoided the tip of the sword, and then he launched a backhand slap at Yang Yi's stomach. Yang Yi took around 10 steps back, and then he shot forward again. Meanwhile, the sword in his grasp had been exchanged for the Herculean sword, and he swung it down at the old man. This swing caused the space around the old man to split apart. A wisp of shock flashed through the old man's eyes. His body is that terrifying? He was actually fine from taking a palm of mine directly? The contempt in the old man's eyes faded slightly, and it was replaced with slight seriousness. He didn't dare act carelessly, and he twisted his palms and slapped them upwards. In an instant, 2 waves of energy surged out from his palms and slammed against Yang Ye's sword. Bang! A rumbling explosion resounded throughout the surroundings, and then the space there instantly collapsed but took less than a breath to be restored. Meanwhile, Yang Yi and a Nanjing were locked in combat with the old man. Their movements were too swift to the point that besides Wuxiang, no one else could see their battle clearly. All they saw was 3 blurry shadows floating about, and then space cracked, collapsed, and recovered from time to time. At this moment, shock filled the eyes of all the students from White Deer Academy's outer court. Because the old man was an instructor of the outer court, and he was a high-rank saint. Moreover, he was one who hadn't relied on any external forces to attain his current cultivation. So not to mention in White Deer Academy, he was a first-rate figure even in the outside world. But at this moment, Yang Yi and a Nanjing were actually able to fight him equally. What did that mean? It meant that Yang Yi and a Nanjing's strength far surpassed them. It meant that Yang Yi and a Nanjing hadn't come to White Deer Academy to give their lives away. They actually possessed sufficient strength. Bang! Space instantly collapsed, and then Yang Yi and Nanjing and the old man split apart. At this moment, the old man had an extremely fierce expression on his face, and there were injuries from both a sword and spear on him. He hadn't expected that he'd actually been publicly injured by two ants at the Half-Saint realm. Since both of you want to die, then I'll fulfill your wish. The old man roared furiously and was about to attack. However, Yang Yi suddenly drew his sword, and a beam of sword energy shot out from the ancient sheath towards the old man. It was 80 overlapped heaven rends. Moreover, they'd been enhanced by void rank sword intent. The sword energy tore through the air and arrived before the old man. The old man's face turned grim because the strength of the sword energy was much greater than before. He didn't dare act carelessly, and he waved his hands and made the spirit energy in the surroundings surge into him. After that, he slapped both his palms towards Yang Ye's sword energy. Bang! A loud explosion resounded as the ground and space here instantly cracked apart, and then the old man was blasted backwards. Meanwhile, Yang Yi suddenly appeared behind the old man and slammed his fist towards the old man's back. The old man's pupils constricted when he noticed the fist behind him, and he forcefully twisted his figure and slammed his fist against Yang Ye's fist. Bang! Their fists collided, and the old man was blasted back again. Meanwhile, a Nanjing appeared behind him, and then she stabbed Sky Split forward. It was swift like a bolt of lightning, and coupled with the fact that the old man was being pushed back by the force of Yang Ye's punch, he wasn't able to dodge it all. However, he forcefully twisted his body and caused the spear which was about to stab his heart to stab his left shoulder instead. Bang! The old man's figure flew forward along with Sky Split stuck in his shoulder. Meanwhile, Yang Yi suddenly appeared in front of him and kicked the old man's stomach. Pooh! A mouthful of blood sprayed from the old man's mouth as he crashed against the ground, causing the entire area to quake. Once Yang Yi descended to the ground, his figure flashed over to the old man, and then he stomped his foot down towards the old man's head. Suddenly, the space above them was torn open, and then a ray of light shot out from there and struck Yang Ye's chest. Bang! Yang Yi was blasted flying, and Nanjing's expression changed slightly. Her figure flashed and appeared behind Yang Yi, and then she stretched out her hand to stop him from flying further. However, the force of the attack had been so strong that both of them were still pushed around 30 m back before they finally stopped moving. Yang Yi wiped off the blood on the corner of his mouth, and then he looked up towards the sky and spoke fiercely. What? Can't accept defeat. His voice had been enhanced by profound energy, and it rumbled like a thunderclap through White Deer Dimension. My law faction can naturally accept defeat. A voice resounded from the sky. It can. Yang Yi roared with laughter. The voice resounded once more. What are you laughing for? I'm laughing about how laughable that was. Yang Yi looked up at the sky and spoke fiercely. Your law faction can accept defeat? Don't you think that's laughable? Since I arrived at the Central Divine Prefecture, your law faction has been ceaselessly coming and looking for trouble with me. First it was the young, but when the young failed, you used numbers. When numbers failed, the old came instead. When even the old failed, even older fellows came in their place. Is that what you consider as being able to accept defeat? Do you have any shame? Do all of you have any shame? How presumptuous! The voice reverberated like a thunderclap, and even space shook before it. It was a shocking scene. Presumptuous. Yang Yi chuckled. Your law faction has a bunch of high-rank saints while my Ocean of Clouds Academy has nothing. We really can't afford to offend you. Why don't we just cancel the competition? My Ocean of Clouds Academy will just admit defeat, alright? Your law faction will be considered the winner. I'm serious, you're the winner. Let's not waste more time, alright? As soon as they heard Yang Yi, unsightly expressions instantly arose on the faces of all the students from the law faction. The outer court instructor had quite the unsightly expression on his face as well, but it was mostly gloominess which covered his face. If that expert from the inner court hadn't lent him a hand just now, then he would have almost died. Suffering such humiliation before the students of the outer court was definitely the worst humiliation he'd suffered in his lifetime. Most importantly, He could dream of maintaining his position as outer court instructor after this incident. A long time passed before the void in the sky resounded again. My law faction is naturally able to accept defeat, but you seem to have forgotten that our competition is in 2 days, right? Since it's in 2 days, then why have you killed the students of my law faction? Do you know that if it wasn't for the competition, I would have killed you by now? You should be grateful. I've finally found someone more shameless than you. Xianxia shook his head. Yang Yi laughed coldly and said, So you know it's in 2 days? Then I really don't understand why your law faction students came here to kill me today. Alright, we're enemies, so there's nothing wrong with coming to kill me. But what I want to say is that can you send stronger students? Stop wasting my time with trash. Alright? The outer court students were furious when they heard Yang Yi. Yang Yi, what are you getting cocky about? This is White Deer Academy and not a remote backland like Pine Prefecture. Don't even think about being complacent because you have some strength. My law faction has plenty of people who can deal with you. How laughable. I've never seen such an ignorant and arrogant person. Yang Yi, who do you think you are? Do you think that you're on the martial rankings? Not to mention the martial rankings, you're even inferior to our head student. You aren't even a saint after cultivating for so long. So what right do you have to be so complacent? Aren't you ashamed of yourself? People from a lousy place like Pine Prefecture act just like nouveau riches. They're absolutely ignorant. They think they're invincible because they have some strength. How laughable and sad. Yang Yi chuckled. He took 2 steps forward and gazed at them as he said, All of you aren't trash? Then why don't you step forward and fight me? All of their expressions turned unsightly. Meanwhile, Yang Yi added, If you don't dare to fight me in single combat, then how about all of you fight us together? We only have 3 on our side. 3 against all of you. Do you dare or not? This time, even Wuxia's expression was quite unsightly. He wasn't very sure how strong Yang Yi was, but he was very well aware of a Nanjing's strength. Even though he was a realm higher than a Nanjing, he wasn't confident at defeating her at all. While they'd only fought for a moment earlier, he was very well aware how terrifying she was. Once he was locked in battle, the others of the outer court would only be slaughtered by Yang Yi and Xianxia. If that instructor hadn't acted earlier, then the outer court students would have been annihilated by now. What? Cat got your tongues? Yang Yi glanced at them and said, All of you aren't trash, right? Come prove it. Yang Yi suddenly started laughing at this point. Actually, all of you don't have to be scared at all, because even if you're trash, you still have instructors, elders, and various others who are stronger standing behind you. Would all of you even die while you have their protection? You won't. All of you will be completely fine while they are there for you, right? Anyone with a little bit of pride would be unable to endure being insulted to their face. So, one of the students immediately howled furiously, I'll fucking fight you to the death. As soon as he finished speaking, he charged towards Yang Yi. A cold glow flashed through Yang Yi's eyes, and then he vanished on the spot. Bang! An explosion resounded, and then a figure moved backwards repeatedly. It wasn't that student but Yang Yi. Yang Yi finally stopped after being pushed back almost 300 m, and there was a palm print on his chest. And Nanjing appeared by Yang Yi's side, and there was undisguised killing intent in her eyes. I can't stand the sight of this any longer. Suddenly, an old man in a line robe and sandals appeared here. He looked up to the sky and said, Hey old geezers from the law faction, did all of you send invitations far and wide so that the powers of the Central Divine Prefecture can watch all of you bully juniors? Of course, that has nothing to do with me. But if you invited us here to watch you bully juniors, then I'm going back to my sect. A moment of silence ensued, and then the voice resounded again. Outer court students, return to the academy. No one is allowed to leave the academy without orders. Yang Yi, my law faction won't bully you. If you have the ability, then feel free to kill them 2 days from now. But don't worry, you definitely won't have the chance. Let's go. Wuxia glanced at Yang Yi's group, and then he turned around and left. The other outer court students hurriedly followed after him. Thank you, senior. Yang Yi cupped his fists to the old man. The old man sized up Yang Yi and a Nanjing, and then he said, I have to say, it's difficult to imagine how both of you are from Pine Prefecture. Both of you aren't bad. He suddenly gazed at Xiu Shun at this point, and his gaze stopped on Xiu Shun for a moment before he said, You're not really bad as well. Xiu Shun glanced at the old man and remained silent. Meanwhile, the old man continued, Unfortunately, all of you won't live for long. Yang Yi frowned. What do you mean? The old man glanced at him and said, The Law faction invited countless people to watch the competition. Why did they do that? I don't know their true objective. However, I know that they will absolutely not allow the three of you to win, and they will absolutely not allow the three of you to survive. Otherwise, wouldn't they be bringing humiliation to themselves? Yang Yi fell silent. Actually, he'd thought of that when he found out that the Law faction had invited many to watch the competition. But he had no other choice. No matter how dangerous it was, he still had to come. Actually, White Deer Academy is bringing about its own demise. The old man shook his head. White Deer Academy was absolutely brilliant all those years ago. But because of an internal split and internal strife, it has been in a constant decline. Alright, that's enough of nonsense. The old man's figure shook slightly and vanished on the spot. Once the old man left, Yang Yi and the others fell silent. A short while passed before Yang Yi gazed at Xiu Shun. Actually, it really isn't necessary for you to join in. Xiu Shun laughed bitterly. You don't really think that I'm a burden, right? Don't worry, you don't have to care about me if we really get into a battle. I'll deal with everything myself. Yang Yi shook his head and spoke seriously. To be honest, even I'm not confident in our chances in the battles we're about to face. I'm sure you heard the old man. Those fellows might disregard the rules when dealing with us. Xiu Shin pondered deeply for a short while and said, The blood of White Deer Academy's students are already on my hands. Now I have no choice but to stay with you until the end. Otherwise, they'll probably make up an excuse to kill me as soon as I leave. Yang Yi gazed at Xiu Shun for a short while before he said, I don't know why your father made you come with me, but since we're a group now, then let's work together properly. Xiu Shun looked Yang Yi in the eyes. Don't worry, I hold no ill intent towards you. I can swear on my soul. Yang Yi replied, I don't think that you would. I just feel like you might really die if you continue staying by my side. Xiu Shun chuckled. Do you know, I used to be like a coward in the Central Divine Prefecture. I didn't dare to do this and that. Why? Because I was afraid. I was afraid of causing trouble. It was truly a life full of grievance. Even though I'm always filled with anxiety while I'm with you, at least it's not a grieving. Yang Yi nodded. Don't worry. I'll definitely bury you if you die. Xiu Shin was speechless. Suddenly, a figure shot out from White Deer City, and it didn't take long for the figure to arrive in front of Yang Ye's group. Fang Yun. Yang Yi was slightly surprised when he saw the figure's appearance, because it was Fang Yun from the scholarly faction whom he'd met at Ocean of Cloud City that day. Fang Yun gazed at Yang Yi. You really came? Yang Yi replied. What else? Fang Yun took a deep and long glance at Yang Yi. Come with me to the city. Yang Yi nodded, and their group entered the city by Fang Yun's side. Fang Yun led them to a pavilion called the Immortal Cloud Residence. Two white-robed men immediately greeted them when they entered the pavilion. One of them asked, He's Yang Yi? Fang Yun nodded. Let's forget about sleeping tonight and stand on guard. Both of them glanced at Yang Yi, nodded, and then walked out. Yang Yi noticed that over 100 people had suddenly appeared all around the pavilion, and their auras were extremely thick. They were clearly not weaklings. Fang Yun turned around to gaze at Yang Yi. Rest at ease and recuperate in the next 2 days. No one will disturb you. He turned around and walked away once he finished speaking. Yang Yi asked, Is the group from Thousand Cranes Sect in the city or are they in the academy? Fang Yun stopped and said, They are in Incense Pavilion to the south of the city. Do you know them? Yang Yi nodded. Fang Yun glanced at Yang Yi, and then he turned around and left. Xiu Shen spoke solemnly. Something is really off about White Deer Academy. Something huge is definitely about to happen. Yang Yi nodded. He'd noticed that the atmosphere was slightly off as well. A short while passed before he shook his head and said, "Let's not concern ourselves with that. Just recuperate well. We have a difficult battle ahead." And Nanjing and Shuwushin nodded. Late at night, Yang Yi left Immortal Cloud residence. Everything went smoothly with the sword domain and laws of darkness to conceal himself, and he didn't alarm anyone. Yang Yi arrived at Incense Pavilion, and he swept the surroundings with his divine sense. It didn't take long for him to vanish on the spot. In a room within Incense Pavilion, Xiao Yushi was seated cross-legged on the bed with her eyes closed. Suddenly, her eyes opened wide, and there was another person in her room. She was about to attack when that person suddenly said, "There's a mole below your chest. Besides that, there's a small scar a few centimeters beneath your stomach. It's around the size of an index finger. You cut yourself when you lost concentration while cultivating, and you didn't remove it to remind yourself that you can't be careless in the future. As for your inner thigh, there's—" "Shut up!" Xiao Yushi suddenly shouted furiously, and her eyes were filled with shock and bewilderment.